Rain hammered against the windows of the Moonlight Diner, playing a restless rhythm across the glass. Inside, William Carter, a 36 years old and worn down to the bone after finishing his second job of the day, sat folded over a mug of bitter black coffee. He wanted nothing more than a handful of quiet minutes before heading to his overnight security shift. That fragile silence cracked apart when Clinton Moore, wrapped in a suit worth more than most people's monthly rent, seized the wrist of the young waitress. Her eyes widened with a sharp flicker of panic. Several customers pretended not to see. William rose slowly from his seat, his voice low enough to cut through the hush. "That's enough." He had no idea the woman he was stepping in for wasn't just another server. She was Serafina Dawson, a daughter of billionaire tech titan Archibald Dawson. The neon lights washed the chrome tables in ghostly blue while William tried to stretch his 50-cent coffee into a full break. His right shoulder throbbed, the old combat injury from Kandahar aching in the cold. 3 jobs barely kept him and his 7-year-old daughter Bridget afloat: night security in the warehouse district, morning deliveries for a medical supply company, weekend handyman work whenever he could find it. The math of survival was cold and absolute. $1,200 for rent, $300 for utilities, $400 for Bridget's school needs and dance classes, $600 for food, and 1,000 small expenses life demanded. $2,500 a month, just to keep from sinking in a city built to swallow working people whole. He came to the Moonlight Diner because it sat perfectly between his delivery route and the warehouses. The coffee was terrible, but it was cheap, and the night waitress, her blonde hair tied back in a simple ponytail, never rushed him. She moved with a quiet precision that came from long years of service work, yet something about her carried an elegance that didn't quite fit the job. William had noticed it before, but he wasn't the kind of man who pried into the private stories of strangers. Serafina Dawson had been working here for 3 months, and in a strange way, she felt more alive than she ever had in her father's glass-walled empire. There was an irony she didn't miss. She found more truth-boring coffee for truckers and shift workers than she'd ever found sitting in the polished boardrooms of Dawson Tech. 26 years old with the Stanford Masters in product design, she could have been running an entire division at her father's company. Instead, she wore a name tag that said Sarah and understood, for the first time, what real exhaustion felt like when your feet ache after 8 hours of non-stop service. Her father believed she was having some kind of crisis. Her therapist called it the search for authenticity. Serafina simply knew she needed to understand how the majority of the world lived, the 99% who would never step inside a private jet. The bell over the diner door chimed, and Clinton Moore strode in with 2 associates. The sharp scent of overpriced cologne immediately smothered the familiar smell of coffee and fried food. Clinton had built his fortune in venture capital, the kind of man who treated money like sport and people like pieces on a board. He knew exactly who Serafina was. He'd known from the moment she started this little disappearing act of hers, and he'd tucked that information away for the perfect moment. Tonight, with the Dawson Tech cloud infrastructure deal hesitating in negotiations, that moment had finally arrived. Well, a broken bar, Clinton drawled as he slid into a booth, his associates flanking him. "If it isn't the princess playing poor?" He snapped his fingers at her. "Coffee, black, and make it drinkable this time." Serafina approached with her order pad, maintaining the same calm professionalism she offered to everyone. "Good evening, gentlemen. I'll bring your coffees right away. Would you like menus?" "What I'd like," Clinton said as he grabbed her wrist when she turned, "is for you to stop pretending." "How long are you going to play at being poor, sweetheart?" The diner shrank into silence. A trucker buried himself in his newspaper. An elderly couple collected their things. The cook, wanting no part of the moment, turned up the radio. William watched Clinton's fingers dig into Serafina's wrist and caught the flicker of fear she tried to mask behind composure. He knew that look. He had seen it in distant villages, places where power took whatever it wanted because no one dared stop it. He set down his coffee cup with deliberate precision. The Marine in him made a quick assessment. 3 men. Clinton was soft as bark, no real fight in him. His 2 companions were bigger, but they had the posture of men who relied on intimidation. not actual violence. The one on the left kept touching the inside of his jacket pocket, a broken bar. The man on the left was probably clutching a phone in that jacket pocket, ready to call an attorney, the police, or both if things turned inconvenient. The associate on the right was younger and visibly uneasy, his eyes darting toward the exit again and again. Neither of them posed the real threat to someone who knew what an actual threat looked like. "Sir, please release me," Serafina said quietly, her tone steady but tight. Clinton let out a mocking laugh and tugged her closer. "Inappropriate? Sweetheart, this entire little performance you're doing is inappropriate. Does your father know you're playing pauper with the locals? Or is this some dramatic phase you're working through?" William rose to his feet. His movement was slow, deliberate, had the same careful approach he used to take when walking toward a guarded checkpoint, non-aggressive, yet impossible to overlook. His boots whispered across the linoleum as he covered the distance between his table and Clinton's booth. "I believe the lady asked you to let go," he said, voice quiet and even, but beneath that calmness was something far heavier, something that made Clinton's associates straighten with instinctive tension. Clinton looked him over, taking in the worn denim, the threadbare flannel, the hardened calluses on William's hands. "This doesn't involve you, friend. Go back to your coffee and stay out of it." "That's where you're mistaken," William replied, his gaze fixed on Clinton's hand wrapped around Serafino's wrist. "When a man lays hands on a woman against her will, it becomes everyone's business. So I'm going to ask you one time, politely, to let her go." The diner fell still. Only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the muffled hiss of late-night traffic outside disrupted the quiet. Serafina stared at William, surprise woven with gratitude. No one had stepped up for her like this in years. In the world she came from, people didn't intervene out of principle. They calculated what they could gain or lose. They measured consequences, not conscience. Clinton's face darkened with anger. "Do you have the slightest idea who I am? I could buy you out 100 times. I could make a single phone call and end every job you have." "I know exactly what you are," William said, a sharper edge sliding into his voice, as precise and cold as a blade. "You're a man who believes money makes him untouchable. But right now, in this moment, your money doesn't mean a thing. You're going to let go of her wrist, you're going to apologize, and then you're going to walk out of here. Otherwise, we're going to have a very different type of conversation." Clinton made two critical errors in rapid succession. The first was assuming that a man working 3 jobs and wearing old clothes was weak. The second was giving a subtle nod to his associates to handle it. The younger one rose, reaching for William's shoulder. What happened next unfolded so quickly, with such fluid precision, that most diners couldn't fully register it. William pivoted on his left foot, his right hand flashing up to seize the associate's reaching arm. A twist, a firm step to the side, and the young man was suddenly bent face down over the table, his arm locked behind him in a painful control hold that promised a much worse outcome if he resisted. The second associate had only begun to rise when William turned his head and raised his free hand, just a small gesture, yet it carried enough silent authority to stop the man in his tracks. "No one needs to get hurt tonight," William said, his tone still no louder than conversation. "Your friend is fine. His shoulder might complain tomorrow, but nothing is damaged. Not yet." He looked back at Clinton. "Let her go." Now, Clinton finally released Serafino's wrist, humiliation and fury warring across his face. She stepped back quickly, rubbing the red imprint his fingers had left on her skin. William held the young man down for a heartbeat more before letting him go. The associate staggered backward, clutching his shoulder. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life," Clinton spat, yanking out his phone. "I'm calling the police." "Assault, battery. You're going to jail, and I'll personally make sure you never see daylight in this town again." William returned to his table as if nothing remarkable had happened. He lifted his coffee mug, took a calm sip, and said, "Call whoever you want. Everyone here saw you grab her first. That's assault. What I did was defend someone who needed help. Any officer worth the uniform knows the difference." 12 minutes later, the police arrived. Lieutenant Henry Brooks, a 20-year veteran, took statements from every witness. The security camera footage was annoyingly blurred by glare from the neon signs, obscuring the initial moments of the confrontation. But Serafina's account was clear, and two customers reluctantly confirmed that Clinton had grabbed her against her will. "Looks like self-defense to me," Lieutenant Brooks finally said, closing his notebook. Lieutenant Brooks already knew of William May, not personally, but by the kind of reputation that quietly circulates through a town. The Marine veteran who worked himself to the bone to raise his daughter. The man who never caused trouble, never missed a payment, never complained. The kind of citizen police officers wished every neighborhood had. "But Mr. Moore is insisting on pressing charges," the lieutenant said, his tone apologetic but firm. "So I'll need you to come down to the station, Mr. Carter." William nodded. "I need to make a quick call first. My daughter's staying with a neighbor, and I'm supposed to start a shift in an hour." When Bridget answered, her voice was soft with sleep. "Daddy, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, sweetheart," he said gently. "I might be a little late. Mrs. Chen will make you breakfast. Be good for her, okay?" There was a small pause. "Did you help someone, Daddy, like you used to when you were a Marine?" William shut his eyes, pain and pride mixing in his chest. "Something like that, baby. Now get some sleep." At the station, Clinton was already camped out with the high-priced lawyer, a slick, smirking man in an expensive suit who talked endlessly about lawsuits, damages, and putting people back in their place. But an unexpected ally arrived. Andrea Collins marched into the station at 2:30 in the morning. 34, sharp-eyed, with a presence that suggested she had battled through life and won more than outsiders expected. She had put herself through law school on scholarships while raising two children alone. She didn't scare easily. "I'm representing Mr. Carter," she announced, flashing her credentials. One of the diner's customers had called her, knowing she sometimes offered free legal aid to veterans. "I need a private moment with my client." By the time dawn broke, William's phone was buzzing non-stop. Someone had uploaded a selectively edited video, carefully cut to show only the moment William restrained Clinton's associate. The caption beneath it read, "Unstable veteran attacks customer at local diner." The clip spread quickly, amplified by local news feeds and social media accounts hungry for scandal. By midday, William's security employer terminated him, citing liability concerns. Serafina learned of the video from Vivian Hale, her father's razor-sharp head of public relations. Vivian, cool and composed at 31, had built her career on managing disasters with surgical precision. She sat opposite Serafina in a Dawson Tech conference room, tablet in hand, expression unreadable. "This is escalating," Vivian said. "The man who protected you is being portrayed as dangerous. Clinton Moore is leveraging his connections in media circles, and the narrative is slipping beyond our control." "Then it's our job to fix it," Serafina replied. "He stepped in when everyone else turned away. He protected me." Vivian taped her tablet and brought up a profile. "That man is William Carter, former Marine, honorable discharge after sustaining injuries in Afghanistan, widower as wife passed from cancer 4 years ago, single father. He's been receiving treatment for PTSD, which Moore's camp is already twisting into claims of mental instability." A surge of anger flared in Serafina, sharper and more visceral than anything she'd felt in her life. "He saved me from being assaulted, and now they're ripping his life apart." "Welcome to the real world," Vivian said quietly. "The question is, what will you do about it?" Before she could respond, the conference room door swung open. Archibald Dawson walked in, a 62, powerful, unshakably confident, the kind of man who built a tech empire through sheer force of will. He looked at his daughter with an expression somewhere between concern and irritation. "This ends now," he said. "Your little adventure has gone on long enough. You're coming home. Finn will take over your security detail." Finn Turner stepped into view behind him, a 33, former Special Forces, now high-tier private security. Everything about him, from posture to presence, radiated controlled force. But Serafina didn't budge. "No," she said, "I'm not running from this, and I'm not letting them destroy William Carter for defending me." Archibald's voice dropped into a cold, dismissive register. "He is a nobody, a man scrapping by on 3 jobs. He likely recognized you and seized an opportunity." "He didn't know who I was," she shot back. "He helped me because it was right." "When was the last time anyone in our world did something simply because it was right?" "In the days that followed," William's life continued to collapse around him. The edited video kept circulating. At Bridget's school, parents whispered behind hands. His handyman clients suddenly claimed they had no available projects. His delivery supervisor gently suggested he take a break until things settle. Andrea fought relentlessly on his behalf, filing motions, gathering witness statements, pushing back wherever she could. But the legal wheels turned painfully slow, and Clinton's legal team escalated even further, filing a civil suit alleging financial damages for assault. "They want to crush you into surrender," Andrea said, leaning back in her cramped, paper-buried office, "force you to sign a confidentiality agreement and vanish." "I didn't do anything wrong," William answered quietly, his fingers interlaced on the table. His hands were steady now, and no tremor, no uncertainty of the therapy that had steadied him for 2 years still holding firm. "I stepped in because someone needed help, and that," Andrea said, "is precisely why they're coming after you with this level of spite." You embarrassed Clinton more in a room full of witnesses. Men like him do not forgive humiliation. That night, William sat across from Bridget at their small kitchen table as she worked on her school project. She was carefully coloring a sketch of Caped Hero holding a shield. "Is this supposed to be me?" he asked, pointing at the drawing. "It's you saving the lady at the diner," she replied simply. "Mrs. Chan told me. She said you were brave." "Being brave sometimes comes with a heavy price, sweetheart," he murmured. Bridget lifted her eyes far older than her 7 years deserved. "But you still did it. That's what makes it brave." "A broken bar, right?" The knock at the door arrived just as the clock struck evening. William opened it to find Serafina standing there in no uniform, just a sweater and jeans, holding a foil-covered casserole. "I thought you might need a real meal," she said softly. "May I come inside?" He stepped aside. She slipped into the modest apartment, taking in the immaculate orderliness, everything arranged with military precision. On the mantel sat a folded flag, photographs of William in formal marine dress, and a smiling woman in picture frames that clearly belonged to Bridget's late mother. "You didn't have to come here," William said. "Yes, I did," she replied. She set the casserole on the counter and drew a breath. "He's a broken bar. This disaster is my fault. Clinton is targeting you because of my father, because of their business rivalry. You were pulled into a war you never agreed to fight." "I knew exactly what I was doing," William said firmly, "and I would do it again." For a moment they stood together in the small kitchen, two completely different worlds intersecting because of one violent moment and one courageous choice. Serafina's eyes drifted to the stack of bills arranged neatly near the sink, the chore schedules, the overlapping job shifts, the crayon drawings covering nearly every spare inch of wall. "There's something I need to tell you," she said. "My name isn't Sarah. It's Serafina Dawson. My father is Archibald Dawson, the owner of Dawson Tech." "I had already pieced that together," William replied. "Your voice, your posture, a broken bar. You weren't raised in this kind of life." "Doesn't matter. That night you were simply a person who needed help." That was enough. Something softened in her expression, a kind of honesty she wasn't used to feeling. "I want to help you. Let me cover a better attorney. Let me fix this number." His refusal was immediate and final. "I'm not taking charity, and I'm not letting your father buy my integrity." Clinton Moore was wrong, and everyone in that diner knows it. "If money is allowed to decide guilt, what world does that leave for my daughter?" His gaze flicked toward Bridget's room. The legal battle escalated over the following days. Clinton's team flooded news feeds with selectively chosen pieces of William's past to his deployment in Afghanistan twisted into suggestions of volatility. His PTSD turned into a weapon against him. Reporters dug up a photograph from a bar altercation 6 years earlier, before therapy, before recovery, before he rebuilt his life after losing his wife. The truth behind the picture didn't matter. They were constructing a narrative, stone by stone. But Serafina and Andrea were building one of their own. Andrea tracked down Gwen Parker, a former bartender who had dealt with Clinton's unwanted advances. She had text messages explicit, undeniable. 2 other women, fearful of publicity, provided quiet written statements describing similar encounters. "We have a behavioral pattern," Andrea said, spreading evidence across her conference table. "But it means nothing unless we can prove what happened at the diner. The security footage is distorted. The angle and lighting work against us. Then we need a different key." Sarafina said, or a different witness. Andrea responded. That witness turned out to be Marcus Rodriguez, a trucker who had been eating in the far booth that night. He had stayed silent to avoid complications, but his 12-year-old daughter had seen the news coverage and asked him why the man defending a woman was now being treated like a criminal. I watched everything, Marcus said in his recorded statement to Andrea and Sarafina. That Clinton guy yanked the waitress hard enough to leave bruises. She asked him clearly and repeatedly to let go. The veteran gave him every opportunity to walk away. What he did was textbook defensive intervention. I would know. I served as military police before switching to long-haul trucking. While this testimony strengthened William's case, Clinton escalated behind the scenes. Through go-betweens, he delivered an offer. $50,000 and a signed non-disclosure agreement, enough money to stabilize William's rent, secure Bridget's school future, maybe even start a savings plan for her. William stared at the papers for barely a breath before ripping them in half. Tell Clinton Moore he can take his bribe and his gag order and bury them where light never reaches. The retaliation arrived swiftly. New photos appeared on linear grainy telephoto shots of William walking Bridget to school, Bridget at her dance practice, the two of them leaving their building. The message was unmistakable. We know your patterns. We know your movements. We're watching. Lieutenant Henry Brooks, the officer who handled the initial incident, saw the images and immediately launched a formal inquiry into criminal harassment. This crosses every boundary, he told William. This isn't intimidation of a witness. It's a crime. The turning point, however, came from an unexpected direction. Finn Turner, Archibald Dawson's head of security, had been conducting quiet research on William at his employer's request. His job had been to uncover damaging information, prove William had ulterior motives, anything that could justify pushing him aside. Instead, Finn found a veteran who had carried the guilt of losing two men in an ambush, who had stood by his dying wife through a harrowing 18-month cancer fight, who had worked himself to the bone yet never once missed a school meeting for his daughter. Finn sat across from Archibald in the billionaire's officia, a room furnished with pieces worth more than William would earn in many years. Your daughter is right, Finn said. He's the real thing. Everyone has a price, Archibald muttered, eyes fixed on the market data glowing across his screens. Not everyone, Finn answered. Moore offered him $50,000 to vanish. Carter tore it up. They've been photographing his daughter to scare him. He still won't bend. When was the last time you met someone who couldn't be purchased? Archibald finally lifted his gaze. In his world, every interaction was an exchange, every alliance transactional. Yet here was a man who had risked everything for his child, expecting nothing from anyone. What would you suggest? Archibald asked quietly. Help him, Finn said. Not with money, with the truth. The annual Dawson Tech Showcase was the largest technology event on the entire West Coast. Hundreds of journalists, investors, and industry titans crowded into the vast conference hall to witness the unveiling of Cloud Atlas, the revolutionary distributed computing platform destined to reshape global infrastructure. Naturally, Clinton Moore was present, mingling confidently with other high-profile investors, certain that his troubles with William would soon disappear. Archibald Dawson stepped onto the stage to thunderous applause, but instead of beginning his keynote on Cloud Atlas, he did something completely unexpected. Before I speak about the future of technology, he said, his voice steady and commanding, I need to address something far more important to the present state of our humanity. The room fell silent at once. 2 weeks ago, my daughter was assaulted in a diner. A man grabbed her, hurt her, and attempted to use wealth and influence to intimidate her. Most people there chose to look away, except for one man. The screens behind him flickered to life. The diners had only seen the degraded, low-quality version circulating online. This was not that. This was the untouched original pulled directly from the security system restored frame by Dawson Tech's top enhancement engineers. It showed everything clearly. Clinton's hand crushing Sarafina's arm, Sarafina wincing in pain, other patrons pretending not to see, and William rising slowly, calmly, trying to defuse the situation. The man defending my daughter, Archibald said, is William Carter, a Marine veteran, a single father, a man working 3 jobs to provide for his child. He has been subjected to a deliberate campaign of harassment for doing what every person in that diner should have done: standing up for someone in need. Clinton's face drained of color. He tried to slip out through the side aisle, but 3 uniformed officers, including Lieutenant Brooks, blocked his escape. Clinton Moore, Brooks announced sharply. "A broken bar. I have come to understand something vital through all of this," he said, his tone steady. "My daughter chose to work in that diner because she wanted to learn how everyday people live, what burdens they carry, and what genuinely matters to them. She was right, because how can we design technology for everyone if we refuse to understand everyone?" Serafina stepped forward. Dana, not as a billionaire's heir pretending to taste ordinary life, but as a woman who had discovered her courage through hardship. "William Carter did not pull me out of danger because I was Archibald Dawson's daughter," she said. "He had no idea who I was. He helped me because I was a human being who needed protection. That is the kind of integrity we should all strive for, and that is why I am launching the Safe Workplace Initiative," she continued, "a fully funded program designed to prevent harassment and ensure safety for workers at every level, open to any company willing to participate." The story dominated the news cycle, though not with the attention Clinton had imagined. Within days, 6 additional women stepped forward describing similar encounters with him. Clients fled his investment firm. Federal authorities began examining his questionable financial dealings. The man who believed wealth made him invincible finally learned that even power collapses when the truth emerges. William watched the coverage from his apartment. Bridget curled beside him on the couch. Andrea had already called to say that Clinton's civil suit was being withdrawn and a settlement was being discussed for the harassment and defamation William had endured. "You are going to be fine," Andrea assured him. "Better than fine. 3 companies have already reached out, each one interested in hiring someone with your integrity." But William's thoughts were elsewhere, on Serafina's words about doing the right thing when no one is watching, on the terror he saw in her eyes that night, and on the strength she had shown in front of the world. A few days later, another knock came at the door. This time it was Archibald Dawson himself, with Finn at his side. The billionaire looked strangely out of place in the narrow hallway, yet he stood there without the slightest discomfort. "Mr. Carter," Archibald began, "I owe you an apology. I assumed you were attempting to exploit my daughter." He exhaled softly. "I was wrong." William stepped aside, allowing them in. Bridget peeked from her bedroom doorway, startled by the unexpected guests. "You owe me nothing," William answered. "I did what any decent person should do." "That is precisely the point," Archibald replied. "Anyone should have you, but only you did. My daughter said something that has stayed with me about understanding real people. I built an empire believing technology improved lives, yet somewhere along the journey, I drifted away from those very lives." He reached into his jacket and produced an envelope. William immediately shook his head. "I am not interested in your money." "It is not money," Archibald said. "It is a position, a real ONIA head of security for our new Community Initiatives division. The same division my daughter will be leading. $90,000 a year, full benefits, and flexible hours so you can be present for your daughter. You would be protecting people who need it and teaching others to act with the courage you showed." William glanced at the offer, then at Bridget, who now stood holding a picture she had drawn of him as a superhero. "May I think about it?" he asked. "Of course," Archibald said. He paused at the doorway. "And for what it is worth, Mr. Carter, a broken bar, I would be proud to have a man like you watching over my daughter, not as her bodyguard, but as her colleague, perhaps even as her friend." After they left, William sat at the kitchen table staring at the offer. Bridget climbed into his lap. "Are you going to take it, Daddy?" "What do you think I should do?" he asked. "I think you should choose what makes you happy," she said softly. "And helping people makes you happy." 2 weeks later, William Carter stepped through the entrance of the Dawson Tech headquarters for his first day. He wore the same flannel shirt from the diner because clothing never defined a man. His actions always had. Serafina awaited him in the lobby, not as a billionaire's daughter, but as his partner in building something meaningful. "Ready to change the world?" she asked with a warm smile. "I just want to make it a little safer," William replied. "One person at a time." Together they walked toward the elevator, passing walls lined with photographs of technological triumphs and financial victories. But the newest broken bar, the newest addition to the wall, looked unlike the others. It was a modest plaque engraved with the simple truth: integrity means choosing what is right when no one is there to see it. Beneath the inscription hung a blurry photograph from the diner captured at an awkward angle, showing one man rising to his feet while everyone else remained seated. It did not commemorate the chaos that followed, nor the scandal that spread afterward. It honored a single moment of choice. The instant William Carter decided that a stranger's safety mattered more than his own comfort. A month later, the Safe Workplace Initiative formally launched, with Serafina serving as director and William leading security and training. Andrea Collins joined as the program's legal counsel, her passion for justice finally backed by real structure and resources. Even Vivian Halley, the PR executive who had once tried to bury the story, became one of its most dedicated supporters, using her media influence to amplify the message far beyond their expectations. The first official training session took place inside the Moonlight Diner, whose owner eagerly volunteered the space. William stood before managers, employees, and security professionals from different companies, teaching not only how to intervene physically, but how to recognize the moral imperative to act. The hardest battle, he told them, is not the confrontation itself. It is pushing back against the voice that insists it is not your problem and that you should stay out of it. But when someone is being harmed and you have the ability to help, it is your problem. It belongs to all of us. Among the attendees sat Gwen Parker, beside the other women who had come forward about Clinton War. They were no longer silent, no longer victims, so they were advocates, sharing their experiences to help others spot harassment and respond decisively. The program's influence spread outward like ripples across water. Each training session produced more individuals willing to intervene, to speak up, to protect those who needed protection. Clinton Moore's trial became a pivotal legal case not only for the attack on Serafina, but for his long-standing pattern of harassment and his attempt to dismantle William's life through fear and manipulation. He received an 18-month prison sentence and was ordered to compensate his victims significantly. More importantly, his downfall became a warning. Wealth and influence crumble when confronted by truth and collective courage. Half a year after that night in the diner, William and Serafina stood together in a quiet park watching Bridget learn to ride her bicycle without training wheels. It had become their Sunday ritual, a moment untouched by Dawson Tech, untouched by legal battles, untouched by the work of changing the world. It was simply the three of them, bound by a night that had begun in violence and somehow transformed into something hopeful. "You know what Bridget asked me yesterday?" Serafina said, holding a box of homemade cookies for their small picnic. She asked whether standing up for others runs in families. William smiled, eyes fixed on his daughter as she wobbled but stayed upright. "And what did you tell her?" "I told her," Serafina said softly, sliding her hand into his, "that it is now." Bridget completed her first full lap, triumphant and laughing, arms raised high. William and Serafina applauded her like she had conquered a mountain. It was a tiny victory in the grand scale of life, here just a child learning balance, yeah, but it was built on the same foundation as everything they were building together: trust, bravery, and the belief that falling was simply part of learning to rise again. The Moonlight Diner still served its infamously terrible coffee at all hours. The neon sign still flickered in shades of blue across the metal tables. But now, a new sign hung by the register: "Harassment is not tolerated in this establishment. We stand up for one another here." And across town, in a modest apartment, a former Marine no longer worked 3 exhausting jobs to survive. He worked one job, but one that meant something, at teaching others what had guided him his entire life: that dignity is not measured by wealth, that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it, and that sometimes, standing up for one frightened stranger in a roadside diner can change more lives than anyone could ever predict. William Carter never set out to become a hero. He simply refused to be a silent observer. And in a world where so many choose to look away, that single choice made all the difference.